Hello, my name is Mark Saunders and I'm the creator of the Research Onion. This video is about the Research Onion and it's one of a series of YouTube videos which I'm creating called Mark Saunders on Research Methods. The link for all the YouTube videos can be seen on the left hand of each of the slides. In this video I'm going to talk to you about the purpose, why I developed the Research Onion with my colleagues. I'm then going to provide an explanation of the layers in the onion and then focus on how to use it, going into more detail about the layers and what questions you need to ask yourself when developing your research in relation to each of the layers. I'm then going to talk a little bit about methodological fit, which is making sure that all the layers of the onion line up. We'll then move to a smaller part where we look at the background to the Research Onion and how it's developed over the years. Next, there'll be a section on copyright and permissions. The main point of this is it will tell you when and how you can reproduce the onion in your own assignments, dissertations and theses, and how to acknowledge it with permission from myself. And finally, I'm going to leave you with a series of references for further reading. The Research Onion offers a metaphor for the things we need to think about before we actually go out and collect our data. In other words, a metaphor for things which are at the centre of the onion diagram on the slide in front of you. To start peeling an onion from the centre is really difficult. Similarly, although you may think it's easy to start with collecting your data, it's very difficult until we thought about all the other factors that impact upon how we collect our data, the other layers of the onion. The final parts of collecting data obviously involve gaining access, acting ethically, how we select our sample, and then the actual techniques, be they interviews, observation, questionnaires, and so on. And then obviously we undertake our analysis. The purpose of the onion is to depict these different layers or the aspects of research which you need to be clear about before you collect your data. Crucially, these are clearly interlinked and they all underlie your choices. But just because you do one thing doesn't mean you have to do one other thing. You have a variety of choices within this. By working your way through the onion from the outside through to the inside, you will be challenged to reflect on who you are as a researcher, your research timeframes, and how these impact on the choices you're going to make in order to be able to answer your research question. So in other words, the onion is a tool which prompts you to plan your research carefully rather than make superficial choices. So it enables you to undertake your research better in terms of getting the methods to be appropriate to answer your question and crucially also appropriate to whom you are. Each layer of the Research Onion is therefore in effect asking you one or two questions about different aspects of research, and the answers to these questions represent the things you need to be clear about or the aspects you need to be clear about before you progress your research. And the answers to these questions all need to fit together. In other words, you need to have what is known in the literature as methodological fit. Everything fits together logically. The Research Onion assumes you already have a research question or an overall aim. It talks about broader assumptions that impact upon your research and also specifics. So we're going to look at these in more detail in subsequent slides, but in overview, broader assumptions are your research philosophy and related to this, the approach to theory development you're going to use. The specifics relate to your methodological choice, the strategies you're going to use to collect your data, or the strategy, it can be one or more, the time horizon over which your data will be collected, and these link forward and join together to suggest a range of procedures to collect the data and data analysis techniques. So you work your way from the outside of the onion looking at your research philosophies through to the centre where we're talking about issues of procedures and techniques. The outer layer of the research onion refers to your research philosophy. In the onion, we show 5 frequently used philosophies for business and management research: positivism, critical realism, interpretivism, postmodernism and pragmatism. However, it is crucial to know that there are more than just these 5 philosophies. For example, we have feminist philosophies, and these are also readily apparent and useful in management research. What the onion's outer layer, the philosophy layer, prompts you to do is ask yourself questions about your own research philosophy. It asks about your assumptions about reality, your ontological beliefs. Do you believe there is only one reality out there, for example, or are there multiple realities? It asks you to reflect on your assumptions about knowledge, your epistemological beliefs. Do you believe certain types of knowledge are better than others and certain types of knowledge are not appropriate? What makes good data? These forms of beliefs. And finally, it prompts you to reflect on your assumptions about the impact of your own values and your own beliefs on your research, your axiological beliefs. This is about whether you believe you can undertake research value neutrally or you will have an impact on the research you do. It's important to be able to answer these questions in relation to the research you're going to undertake and before you decide on the methods you're going to use. In order to do this, you can use a tool called HARP, Heightening Awareness of Research Philosophy. This was developed by myself and Alexander Bristow from the Open University in the UK, and there's a web link to this later on in the slides. The second layer of the onion, moving from the outwards inwards, is approaches to theory development. This prompts you the question, what is your approach to theory development to answer your research question or meet your overall aim? And there are 3 different approaches to theory development. There's where we already have a theory and we collect data to test it, so a theory testing or deductive approach. There is another approach where we build theory from the data we collect, so we start with data and build theory from it, inductive approaches. And then the final approach is theory generation or modification. This is where we have either started deductively or inductively, so started theory testing or theory building, and then some surprising fact comes or surprising finding comes from our data as we're doing the theory testing or theory building, which forces us to modify our theory and change the way we're collecting data. So we may start off theory testing and find out something we didn't expect, and then move into collecting data from which to build theory. The next layer in the research onion is called methodological choice. This asks you the question, what form or forms of data best answer your research question or best meet your overall aim? It comprises of a variety of different possible methodological choices, starting with monomethods, be they a monomethod quantitative methodological choice, which is where you're collecting quantitative data, such as with a questionnaire, or a monomethod qualitative choice, where you're collecting data with a qualitative method and qualitative data, such as using perhaps in-depth interviews. Monomethods, be they qualitative or quantitative, can be combined into multi-method quantitative methodological choices, such as when you perhaps use secondary data that's quantitative and combine that with your own questionnaire. Alternatively, they can be qualitative multi-methods, such as when you perhaps collect data using observation and also using in-depth interviews. An alternative methodological choice is to mix the methods. Mixed methods can be done either simply or more complex, but the ideas behind them are very much the same. Mixed methods uses both quantitative and qualitative data collection and analysis techniques. So, for example, you might have a mixed methods where you start off with interviews, these being in-depth interviews, collecting some qualitative data, and then follow that up with questionnaires which you can collect quantitative data from. When you actually start to have more complex designs, perhaps you start off with secondary data, quantitative data, which you analyse. You then, on the basis of this, design a survey, again using a questionnaire which collects quantitative data again. And then when you have the findings from the questionnaire, you do a series of in-depth interviews to better understand what the findings mean. Then you have a more complex mixed methods design. The crucial thing, though, is that your methodological choice fits with your research philosophy and your approach to theory development. So, for example, a quantitative method fits well with a deductive approach and with a positivist research philosophy. When we move to a qualitative mono method or qualitative multi-method, this tends to fit well with induction in terms of your approach to theory development and with an interpretivist approach. And notice I use the word tends. It doesn't always have to be the case. In contrast, when you're doing a mixed methods design, this can be deductive or abductive or inductive. Quite often it's abductive, and this tends to fit well with a pragmatist research philosophy or perhaps critical realism. Note though that critical realism can also fit with qualitative data and also with mono and method quantitative designs as well. So there's a lot of variation here, and you have to think the logic through. The next layer of the research onion relates to your research strategy or strategies. It prompts you with the question, what strategy or strategies will best enable you to answer your research question or meet your overall aim? There are a variety of research strategies shown on the onion, ranging from experiment, survey, ethnography, grounded theory, narrative inquiry, archival research, case study, and action research. And here the crucial thing is the strategy that you choose, or indeed the strategies that you choose, fit with your research philosophy, your approach to theory development, and your methodological choice. So as we move further in to the centre of the onion, our choices are constrained more and more by the answers to the questions associated with the previous layers. So just to give an example, a survey research strategy is likely to be linked to a mono method quantitative methodological choice. It's likely to use a deductive approach to theory development and is probably going to be related to positivism. The final layer of the research onion before we reach the centre is time horizon. This relates to the time in which you have to undertake your research, and so it prompts two questions for you. What timescale of data collection are you working to? In other words, what deadlines do you have? And also, and very crucially, what timescale of data collection will best enable you to answer your research question or meet your overall aim? And here we have two distinct timescales. There's cross-sectional, which is basically when we collect data once in one time period. And then there's longitudinal, where we collect data at different points over time. For many research projects, especially at undergraduate and master's level, it is most likely, if you're collecting your own data, you'll be using cross-sectional research. And if you want to undertake longitudinal research, you're likely to be collecting secondary data. So data that was first collected by someone else probably, but for a separate purpose. The crucial thing was data that was collected for a different purpose. Once again, we need to see that these fit with your research philosophy, your approach to theory development, your methodological choices, and your research strategy. So we see all things moving through and across. The final layer of the research onion, the centre of it, relates to data collection procedures and analysis techniques. This is in effect answering the question, what data do you need to answer your research question and meet your overall aim? And in working through this final centre or layer of the onion, you need to bear in mind all the answers to your previous questions, all the answers to the previous layers, and think about, within the boundaries set by these answers, how will you gain access to your data? How will you select your sample? What will you use as your primary, if you're collecting your own data, and or secondary data that's already been collected for some other purpose, collection procedures? What will you use as your data analysis techniques? And then finally, how will you ensure that you are ethical throughout the process? Crucial to bringing all the layers together to enable you to choose those data collection procedures and analysis techniques is the issue of methodological fit across the layers of the research onion. Your methodological fit looks at your methodological choice, your research strategies, your data collection and your data analysis, and make sure they all fit with one another and crucially enable the research question to be answered. But all this is done within the broader assumptions of your research philosophy, the approach you're adopting to theory development, and these all underpin the final data collection procedures and analysis techniques you choose. So in effect, the last question we're asking is, or you're asking yourself is, have you ensured internal coherence across all the layers? In other words, have you ensured methodological fit? And the next slide shows you how this can happen. The issue of achieving methodological fit in your research design is really crucial, and yet it's somewhere where people quite often make mistakes when they're using the onion. Hence the title slide, Achieving Methodological Fit, Beware. And the real crucial thing to remember is you cannot draw a straight line across the onion from the outside to the inside and the core and achieve methodological fit. Let me illustrate what I mean. Let's start with somebody who has a positivist research philosophy. Their approach to theory development is deduction, and their methodological choice is monomethod quantitative. They may well be using a survey, undertaking cross-sectional research in terms of their time horizon, and then their procedures and techniques will be quantitatively based, and they will probably be doing something like a questionnaire to collect the data and then analysing these data statistically using the software such as SPSS or Excel. Alternatively, our research philosophy may be interpretivism. We are doing inductive research in terms of our approach to theory development, and our methodological choice this time is a monomethod qualitative. Perhaps we're going to be doing observations. Our research strategy is grounded theory, and we're doing cross-sectional research, and then we'll be collecting our data, we said, through observation. The issue here, as you can see now, is that you are not drawing a straight line across the onion to develop methodological fit. If we look at our final example, in our final example we have someone whose research philosophy is pragmatism, and they are using abductive research, moving between deduction and induction. They're using mixed methods research design in terms of their methodological choice, and they're undertaking action research. So that means they're probably doing research within an organisation to effect change. The research is being done over time in terms of time horizon, so it's longitudinal, and then we move into the appropriate data collection and analysis techniques in relation to this. So what you can see, and I can't emphasize this enough, is that you cannot draw a straight line across the onion in order to achieve methodological fit. You need to think through the answers to each of those questions in relation to yourself and your research project, and then make sure that everything fits together logically. When preparing this presentation, I thought it was probably worthwhile to give you a few words of background on the research onion, just to provide a bit of context. However, if that's not of interest to you, feel free to skip this slide. First of all, the research onion was first published back in 2003 in the second edition of the textbook Research Methods for Business Students, which is co-authored by myself, Philip Lewis and Adrian Thornhill. However, subsequently, in more recent editions, we've developed the onion considerably. And the presentation which you've been watching uses a version of the onion which was published in the 9th edition of Research Methods for Business Students, published in 2023. There is also a short journal article on the research onion written by myself and Paul Tosey, which appeared in the journal Rapport in 2012. This article uses the version of the onion from 2012, which appeared in the 6th edition of Research Methods of Business Students, and it is not the same as the version we use in this presentation. Finally, HARP, that's the tool for diagnosing your research philosophy, developed by Alexander Bristow and myself, is available at the end of the chapter 4 of Research Methods of Business Students, and this chapter is available as a free download, which I'll give you the reference to shortly. Before I get to references though, I just wanted to say a few words about copyright and permissions. Many students want to include the research onion in their assignment, their dissertation or their thesis, and so I thought it was important to let you know what you can and can't do. The research onion which we use in this presentation was published in 2023. It's copyright to myself, and I'm giving you now permission for you to reproduce it in your coursework and assessments, and for lecturers to reproduce it when teaching their students, i.e. in PowerPoint presentations and slides. If you want to use it for any other reason at all other than the ones above, please send me an email, and you can find my email at work by Googling me. If you want to include a copy of the research onion diagram in your own coursework, you can download it from the address here on the slides. The other thing to say, which I think is important, is that the presentation which you've been watching is also copyright, and so hence the disclaimer there. I'd like to finish up with a few references which I hope you'll find useful. The first of these, Bianchi's, is a useful way of looking at defining research philosophy and research practice, which focuses on using the onion. The next reference, by Howard Granville and colleagues, is the first of 3 references I list below, which looks at methodological fit, but focuses very much on qualitative research. The next reference, by Levitt and colleagues, again has some interesting aspects of methodological fit within it, but here we're looking at qualitative, quantitative and mixed methods research. The reference to Research Methods for Business Students, Chapter 4, is there because this is the chapter which introduces the research onion and crucially has within it the tool HARP, highlighting awareness of research philosophy, so you'll be able to diagnose your own research philosophy. This is towards the end of the chapter. The reference by myself and Paul Tosey for Layers of Research Design is that short article on Research Onion. Please remember this is an earlier version of the Onion than used in this presentation. And then finally, the last reference by Wellman and colleagues is again looking in part at methodological fit. So again, a useful reference. I hope you found this presentation of use, and please look on the channel for more presentations. Good luck with your research.